Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good. We all sense it. Not that. We all sense it. We are fast approaching a critical juncture in the history of our nation and our state. I think we are quickly traveling down the wrong path, a path that leads to a point of no return, beyond which the loss of our liberties and the blessings of liberty, in particular prosperity, will become inevitable. Now, it's impossible to tell, of course, when that point of no return will come. You can only really see those kinds of things in retrospect, if at all. But we all sense that it's coming. So time is short. And it's not progress, borrowing an image from C.S. Lewis, to go down the wrong path. Keep going forward if you are indeed on the wrong path, and in this case headed toward a cliff. A cliff of big government, a cliff of a spread the wealth agenda that will destroy the foundations of everything that makes America strong and prosperous, everything that makes America and Minnesota a great place to live, a great place to raise families, and a great place to pursue one's dreams. Rather, to make progress, to go forward, when you are on the wrong path, you actually have to turn around, retrace your steps, go back up the path, find where you made the wrong turn, and then take the right path forward. And what is the right path? Of course, the right path is the path of liberty, and that's why this event is called The Way Back to Liberty. So, sometimes the most proactive choice we can make is to destroy whatever is creating momentum that's pushing us down the wrong path. That is, to stop bad things from happening and to get bad things undone. And perhaps the largest source of momentum pushing us down the wrong path at present is Obamacare. And we're not going to find our way back to liberty unless we can repeal and undo this gargantuan, unconstitutional mess of a law. And because the point of no return is likely close at hand, and because we don't know exactly when it's going to come, we cannot just rely on congressmen in Washington and the Supreme Court in Washington to do all the work for us. We need each of us to do our share of the work. We need groups like Citizens Council for Health Freedom, people like Twyla Brace, to help us, as they have already, push back at Obamacare at every angle and at every turn. And they have done some fantastic work. And people like Representative Mary Franson, Senator Gretchen Hoffman, who are with us tonight as well, have done fantastic work pushing back at this train wreck of a law. Now, in Minnesota, first and foremost, what can we do here? The first thing we have to do is make sure we do not implement an Obamacare exchange, an American Health Benefits exchange. And that's why, with the help of the Citizens Council for Health Freedom and Representative Franson and Senator Hoffman, I authored legislation to bar the establishment of an Obamacare exchange here in Minnesota. And that's why, with the help of those same folks and Twyla and Citizen Council on Health Freedom, I spearheaded an effort, along with Representative Tori Westrom, to have Minnesota, the legislature at least, or a majority of the members of the House, and at least the leadership and a few key members of the Senate, sign on to an amicus brief in the 11th Circuit supporting the position of the 26 plaintiff states and the NFIB in their challenge of Obamacare that has been largely successful to date. Now, I can assure you that there is much more of this to come. A new session is coming, a new year is coming, a new legislative session, and a second half of the legislative session, if you will. And there is more coming because we must not create a new bureaucracy and a new constituency that would depend upon and support what is the largest expansion of government in generations. And we must not dirty our hands helping to tear apart what is left of the boundaries of the Commerce Clause or blur the separation of powers into meaninglessness and oblivion. And that's what planting an Obamacare exchange here in Minnesota would do. We must not invite the federal government to come into our state and completely usurp our legislative prerogatives to legislate healthcare policy oriented towards free markets. So to implement an Obamacare exchange, a state-run exchange here in Minnesota, would be to plant Obamacare in the ground here, to let the roots of Obamacare spread deep and wide across our state, and in connection with other states that are doing the same thing. It will make it all that much harder to uproot the unconstitutional and terrible, ill-conceived law when the time comes to do so. And it will make it all that much harder to return the soil to the fertile soil of free markets that brings innovation and competition and prosperity in healthcare and in all other kinds of ventures, in all other areas of our economy, economic life, and all other areas of life in general. We must not see the Constitution ripped apart and shredded by this unconstitutional law, and that's where we're fighting these exchanges so hard here in Minnesota, joining people across the country who are doing the same thing. Now, finally, we must not forget that repealing Obamacare is just one part of the way back to liberty. A necessary part and a very important part and a large part, but just one part. It's part of a much larger something, a battle of ideas that I think we all can see is emerging across our state, across our nation. And that battle boils down to two answers to one fundamental question. A question about America's most important founding principles. And at bottom it is this: what exactly is freedom? There are many kinds of freedom, but at its core, what does freedom mean? What is freedom? Now, voices from the other side of the debate seem to convey a belief that freedom, true freedom, is freedom from responsibility, freedom from personal responsibility. Or more specifically, they seem to believe that freedom means freedom from responsibility for certain groups of people, not thinking usually about the expense to the liberty and economic liberty of others who have to subsidize those people who are freed from their responsibilities. But we all know, and I think the vast majority of Americans and Minnesotans will agree and are awakening to this fact, that freedom from responsibility is not freedom at all. It is servitude. It is a creeping and dispiriting bondage to whoever or whatever takes on our responsibilities for us. And if this spirit of slavery were to take hold, if we pass that point of no return, that would cripple and destroy us, because we will no longer be men and women, to use Franklin's phrase, capable of keeping our republic. But there is another, deeper understanding of freedom, the freedom of personal responsibility, freedom for virtue, freedom to strive for the best in our individual humanity. This is the freedom our founding fathers sought. This is the freedom upon which our great nation and our great state were built. It is freedom based on the understanding that what makes us unique and human is not what is common and base in us, our fleeting hungers and desires, but instead what is unique and special in man, our ability to dream, to strive, to achieve, in pursuit of what is higher and better, the freedom to follow dreams, build a family, help neighbors in need, not because you're compelled to do so by taxation and through the government, but out of generosity of spirit. It's about organic communities, natural institutions, bulwarks of society, voluntary associations. It is also the freedom to strive, to obligate yourself, to take on responsibilities, to toil to meet them, and then to fail. The freedom to fail and not be bailed out, and to move from defeat to an elusive victory and back to defeat and get back on the horse again. Now, this true freedom, the freedom of personal responsibility, is really the only freedom worth having, because it forges each of us through the fires of consequence and the waters of reward into that stronger stuff which can bear the strain of self-government and build true and lasting prosperity. Now, if we as a state and nation choose the wrong answer to this question, get the answer to this quintessential freedom question wrong, we're going to pass the point of no return. And our friends on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of the debate, many of them seem to believe that Americans aspire simply, and Minnesotans aspire simply, to be the most comfortable people that have ever lived. People who are able to sate their current desires at the expense of their very humanity and the prosperity of future generations. This is incorrect. And the time for half measures and frail words has ended, because no one can be exactly sure what distance remains before we reach that point of no return, before we reach that fatal point. We have to turn back now, and it may actually be that we have to go back quite a ways before we find the right path, before we find the way of freedom, the way of liberty, and the way to prosperity. But do not give up. have faith, have hope. For we all know that we have truth, capital T, truth on our side. And that means that we cannot fail if we put our shoulder to the task, and if we do not give up, if we encourage others, lead others, spread the message, stand on our principles, and do as we say, because words have meaning, ideas have consequences. We will win the day. I am optimistic because Minnesotans and Americans are awakening to the danger to our founding principles, to freedom, to liberty, and prosperity, the blessing of liberty, and limited constitutional government. Americans are awakening in the form of tea parties and groups like the Citizen Council for Health Freedom and all of you here. And that energy just needs to be harnessed. I'm optimistic because there's something deep in the American spirit that calls on us to excel, and it is our duty, our responsibility, to make that possible. Now, that's why I ran for office, state legislature. That's why I'm committed to winning this battle of ideas and finding the way back to liberty. That's why I thank all of you for being here, and I ask each and every one of you to join me and to recommit yourselves to this vital fight. Thank you all very much, and God bless.